Yatagarasu, The Raven Does Not Choose Its Master, is a 2024 anime with way more crow beheadings than you might think. It's also probably the best anime that nobody's watching right now, and if you like twists in your anime, you need to be watching it. The main catalyst of the plot is this contest to determine who will be the next Emperor's bride. Did I mention that they're all ginormous three-legged crows who can transform into humans? Because they are. Anyway, the woman who is chosen after the bridal royale will bring wealth, power, and prestige to her house, so the stakes are pretty high. Naturally, this raises the tension inside the palace as well, and the noble ladies are delightfully snippy with one another at the beginning. But this isn't just some soap opera about rich girls being mean to each other. At the same time, there's a contest being fought in the shadows between two princes to determine who will ascend their father's throne. Yatagarasu is a densely packed show with a large cast, lots of Japanese folklore, and secret identities galore. So while it can seem a little intimidating at first, I'm going to give you the breakdown that you need so that you can understand the show while trying to stay away from as many spoilers as I can. Let's check it out. In Japanese folklore, a Yatagarasu is a mythical crow that does have 3 legs. It's sometimes called an 8-span crow in English, and knowing that helps a bit more of the show make sense. One span is 9 inches, so an 8-span crow would be 72 inches. In other words, a 6-foot-tall crow, or slightly less than 2 meters. Though this could be referring to wingspan rather than height, that's still going to be enormous. This is why when the characters in the show transform back and forth between raven and human forms, you don't see a huge size difference, because the ravens are already human-sized or even larger based on some of the ravens that they ride. It could be that the characters are larger in raven form because they're 6 feet tall as ravens, but they transform into Heian-era Japanese humans, who would have been significantly shorter on average, except for maybe the hulking Rokon. The prevailing theory of the myth's development is that Japanese people about 1,000 years ago took their already existing myths of the mountain god Yatagarasu and combined them with other myths from China that spoke of a divine 3-legged crow that lived in the sun to give the divine raven its final form. While the 3-legged crow shows up in the mythology of Japan, China, and Korea, the Chinese version was known as the golden crow. This is interesting because the first concept you're going to want to learn from the anime is the kinu, or the golden raven. In Japanese, kin refers to gold or golden colored, like blonde hair. Kinero mosaic, for example, literally means gold-colored mosaic because the cast has 2 blonde English girls and 2 dark-haired Japanese girls. I was really hoping it would also be the meaning of Kino's name from Chrono Trigger, but that's a different word, and it would make sense for Kino's journey if you think about it. The first Kino in the show was a divine golden raven who established the kingdom, and all of his successors take the title of Kinu in order to honor him, although most of them are just regular black-colored ravens. I mean, as regular as a 3-legged, 6-foot-tall shape-shifting raven can be. The original Kinu divided the land of Yamagauchi into the 4 directions: east, north, south, and west, and each land has a noble family that governs it. In the center of the land is an administrative district that's run by the current Kinu and his empress, his attendants, and the rest of the royal family. When the noble ladies gather in the Cherry Blossom Palace to compete for the next Kinu's hand in marriage, the contestants are 4 representatives of each noble house, usually one of the daughters of that land's lord. The anime is based on the Yatagarasu series of novels by Chisato Abe, and it adapts the second novel in the series. There's actually 10 novels in the series, with 2 other side stories. The first novel is almost all women. It presents the story from the point of view of the people in the Cherry Blossom Palace, which is where the bridal contest is being held. The second novel presents those same events from the perspective of the male characters, and a lot of secrets or hidden motives in the first novel are explained in the second. Some of the episodes seem to take on the flavor of the first novel, however, because they follow the female cast almost exclusively. The first episode is an example of this, so if you start the show and you think that it's just going to be about the women in the palace, then make sure you watch the second episode before you make up your mind for sure. It can be tough to tell who's who in Yatagarasu. Fortunately, some of the characters are more important than others. The first 2 that you should know are Asebi and Yukiya, because those are the 2 viewpoint characters. We follow Asebi at the Cherry Blossom Palace, and we follow Yukiya everywhere else. Asebi is sweet, innocent, and naive, sometimes to a fault. I think the anime tried pretty hard to develop that need to protect feeling with Asebi, but personally I kept waiting for her to grow a backbone. But she's not a 100% melon-headed human or crow. There's a point where somebody finally says, you know what you could do? You could grow a spine. And she actually does it. I won't tell you how because, spoilers, but maybe there's hope for Asebi. The Empress gives her the name Asebi in episode 1 as an insult to the Crown Prince, which takes a little bit of explaining. Keep in mind that the younger prince is not the Empress's son, and she despises him for pushing her own son out of line for the throne. Asebi is a type of real flower called Japanese Andromeda, but the characters who spell it also mean drunken horse. Asebi's lady-in-waiting Ukogi explains that the prince is the horse and Asebi is the pretty flower who will make him drunk. But we also learn later that horse is the term for ravens who cannot shapeshift. They often sell themselves into servitude doing menial chores like pulling wagons or acting as steeds for other ravens. It's kind of weird to see a raven riding another raven, even if one is in human form. During the time that they're contracted to do their labor, their third leg is bound, and that prevents them from being able to change shape. These horses are basically slaves or indentured servants, the lowest rung on the social ladder. This is why everyone at the court acts so shocked when the Empress gives Asebi that name, because she's basically using the strongest insult in that culture to offend the prince. The second viewpoint character is Yukiya. He's the second son of the head of one of the villages in the northern region. He's also the boy who's running from danger with his brother in the series' opening scene, but the show doesn't explain that. Yukiya is a likable scoundrel who's able to use his wits to get him out of most of the trouble that he gets himself into. He ends up in the Crown Prince's service and proves to be a valuable ally with his hard work and his quick thinking. Though the prince usually rewards this with a dangerous situation or more manual labor, or at most maybe a couple of kumquats. I think they're kumquats, maybe they're little oranges. The next characters to know are the two princes. There's a bit of a squabble about which son should succeed the current Kinu, who's showing signs of decline. Normally the older brother Natsuka would become Kinu. He's first in line for the throne, and he seems to be a capable and intelligent man with strong leadership qualities. Lots of people, or ravens, think that he would make an excellent lord, so he's got a pretty sizable following. But the younger son, Wakamiya, was born with an unusual birthright. He is a true Kinu, or golden raven. Most of the lords who hold the office of Kinu are regular crows, despite their noble bloodlines, but every now and then a child will be born who's a true Kinu, or the true descendant of the original divine crow who established the kingdom. True Kinus inherit their ancestors' powers, appearance, and strategic abilities, supposedly, so they're seen as fated monarchs who will bring the kingdom into a new golden age. There are a couple of problems in this case, however. The first is that everybody seems to think that Wakamiya is an idiot. The rumor is that he's kind of an unpredictable wild man who likes to hang out in the red light district and doesn't really have a head for strategy. This is one of the weirder parts of the anime for me, because every time he shows up, he seems like the smartest person in the room. The other problem is that the two brothers have different mothers. Wakamiya, the younger prince, was born to a concubine, but Natsuka, the older prince, was born to the dangerous and scheming empress of the current Kinu. She did not take well to having her son replaced on the throne, and she's not the kind of person to just leave it at that, so there are quite a few plots being hatched to try to get the elder son back to his role as crown prince. Did I mention he's a priest now? He's a priest now. He gave up his prince title when he decided that the younger brother would make the better Kinu. Here's a rundown of which lady belongs with which house, who each of the lords are, and a couple other important characters for each of the houses. Although really, you just need to know who the four ladies are, and you can ignore the lords for the most part. The second daughter of the Eastern House is Asebi, the female protagonist. The Eastern House is supposed to be a land awash with flowers. Its lord is Haruhito, a man, or raven, with droopy brown eyes and hair that's just starting to turn gray. The North is described as a land that is gushing with springs. Its representative in the bridal contest is Shiratama, the third daughter of the Northern House. She often dresses in white or light blue to match her light blue eyes. Shiratama is possibly the cruelest of the ladies, but there is a reason why she detests the situation that she's in. She's not just evil for evil's sake. The Northern clan is a warrior household that produces a lot of the royal soldiers. Its lord is Genya, who you can recognize from his white hair and white beard. And Yukiya, the male protagonist, is also from a village in the north. The first daughter of the Southern House is Hamayu, who usually dresses in blue to match her striking blue eyes. She's sharp-witted, but rarely if ever cruel, and she tends to keep to herself when the others are having formal gatherings. She's my personal favorite of the Cherry Blossom ladies. The Southern House is known as a land ripe with fruit. Its lord is Toru, a man with angular features and slightly longer hair than the others that reaches nearly to his shoulders. The first daughter of the Western House is Masuho no Suzuki, who dresses in red to match her red hair. She also has green eyes and seems to be the lady who's most concerned with proper etiquette. She might seem like a one-note villain at first, but there might be more to her than that. The Western House is said to be thick with rice. Its lord is Akira, a man whose hair is still brown, though his face is becoming lined. The easiest way to recognize him is from his mustache. In the middle of the four lands is the Central District, or the Royal District. This is where the Kinu and his empress live, along with the rest of the royal court and the servants. It consists mainly of a huge mountain, which would be a great place to, push people to their deaths, unless they were ravens and can fly, so, of course, that'll never happen. Surprisingly, the Kinu himself doesn't play much of a part in the story, and it's the Empress who's possibly pulling the strings behind the scenes. Other characters to keep in mind in the center are Princess Fujinami, who's Princess Wakamiya's sister, and her attendant Samomo, who's one of Asebi's first friends. There are a few key servants who also have recurring roles. Rokon, Natsuka's bodyguard, is hard to miss. He's got one of the more distinctive character designs in the show, with his huge mane of red hair, and he's absolutely gigantic. I hear it's because his mother was part ostrich, but I wouldn't say that to his face. He likes chopping people up, so he puts that size to violent use, but I will say that it's never dull when he's around. Sumio is the third part of the trio of Yukiya, Crown Prince Wakamiya, and Sumio, who form the core group that supports the younger prince's claim. He's the trusted bodyguard of the prince, who's handy with a sword, but he's not nearly the strategist that Wakamiya or Yukiya are. In the Cherry Blossom Palace, there's Ukogi, who's Asebi's lady-in-waiting. This makes her the chief servant in Asebi's employ, and she's a smart and capable woman who seems to be fighting an uphill battle, trying to navigate her naive mistress through a Game of Thrones-style labyrinth of politics and deception. I feel kind of bad for her because bringing Asebi to a contest of strategy is like bringing a stick of butter to a gunfight. Ukogi becomes recognizable pretty quickly, but you can also tell her by the green robe that she usually wears. Other servants to keep in mind are Atsufusa, who I believe is a minor noble, but he mainly acts as one of Natsuka's henchmen, and Samomo, a servant of Princess Fujinami who becomes friends with Asebi and nothing bad ever happens to her, so let's just move along. But you'll want to recognize who she is. If you've heard this anime described as just a royal court drama where four girls bicker amongst themselves about who's going to marry the prince, then I ask you to give this show a second chance. It's filled with secrets, plot twists, and a surprising amount of violence. There are even multiple no-way moments that I had to rewatch as soon as I saw them to see if they actually happened. I give Yatagarasu 9 out of 10 severed crow heads so far. Let me know if you've seen the show or if you plan to watch it after seeing this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.